get towards the second half of October. Fan bases are on edge across the country, just lashing out at people on the internet and at their TV screens like total just unhinged maniacs. But that's what college football fans are, really. Teams backed into a corner that some might not have been expecting to be back in the corner, but it all just really just points to the fact that this season, 2025, has been awesome and has delivered to this point, and I expect it to continue to do so as we get closer to November, playoff rankings, bowl games, national championships, all that kind of stuff. We'll get there when we get there. Anyways, it is week 8. This is College Football Tailgate. I'm Dan Watkins. John McKechnie is here with me as always. John, what's up, brother? We got a big weekend coming up here.
This slate is loaded. I know we say it every week, but it is the dang truth. And like you said, the people are coming out of the woodwork. They're coming at us. We've stirred up some beehives, I'd say, across the country. LSU didn't really care for our contender pretender segment earlier this week. Same with the Texas people. The Oklahoma people were a little bit more like, yeah, no, we're probably frauds. But the Texas folks really doubling down at us and bookmarking our video, and LSU, same deal. So both of them, or more so LSU, we're going to have like a quick expiration date on that one, because if they lose to Vanderbilt, dude, I'm clapping back.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, LSU fans don't care for us, and I don't care for their offense, to put it nicely. So we got a lot to talk about this week. We are going to dive into the big-time matchups here, whether it's Ole Miss at Georgia. We got Notre Dame, USC, possibly for the last time ever, which is just absolutely heartbreaking to think about. We have the third Saturday in October, let's not bury the lead here, actually getting played on the third Saturday in October, Alabama and Tennessee in Tuscaloosa. We got a holy war this weekend, John. We got other games across the country to talk about as well. We will get to that LSU and Vanderbilt game. I got an incredible stat for you guys that I got to throw out when we get to that game, so stay tuned for that. But first, John, I thought we had so much fun with this contender, however you want to put that segment. I thought we should just dive right back in, because it's like, this is like a good swing weekend, right? It's like a good pivot point for a lot of these teams that have been off to hot starts, finding out if they're legit or not, big-time competition, some of them having to go out on the road. Actually, all three of these teams that we are about to talk about, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas Tech, have monster conference road games coming up and challenges to find out just how legit these teams are. Texas Tech, I think, is pretty legit. We'll get to that one last. I want to phrase that one a little differently than these other two. But, John, I want to dive right in here, and I want to talk about Ole Miss. The Rebels are 6-0. Their remaining schedule: at Georgia on Saturday, at Oklahoma next week. Then they get South Carolina at home, followed by the Citadel. Don't sleep on them. Florida goes to Oxford, and then they end the season, of course, with the glorious Egg Bowl in Starkville this year on the road. ESPN's playoff predictor has Ole Miss at a 60% chance of making the playoff. But I'll ask you, Ole Miss, contender or pretender?
I'm saying contender, and I think that I'm going to stand by that regardless of this week's result. I think going to Athens, I mean, the line's 7.5 in favor of Georgia. Like, I'm expecting Ole Miss to lose this game, but I don't really see another loss the rest of the way for this Ole Miss team. I know I've kind of fallen victim of talking myself into OU a little bit too much at times. I know the defense will be a challenge, of course, but I think this sets up really well for Ole Miss to be an 11-win team with just one conference loss. And that inherently puts them right there in the mix as a contender. We'll have to see kind of how the rest of the SEC shakes out and who's able to get into the SEC championship. But I think the SEC is a 3 or 4 team league as far as the college football playoff is concerned. And I think Ole Miss is going to be among them.
Yeah, I'm a contender as well. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they went into Athens and snuck away with a victory somehow this week, just what we've seen from Georgia so far this season and how awesome Chambliss has been. I think it would be a failure at this point if Ole Miss is not in the playoff at this season. Like, 11-1 should very much be on the table. They should be getting one of those at-large bids if they don't somehow end up in Atlanta, which could very well happen as well. I just love what they got going on. The Chambliss story is awesome. A great expose piece on him on ESPN this week. But yeah, I like what they got going on there in Oxford. Uncle Lane pushing the right buttons, pushing other people's buttons.
Yeah.
Everything just seems to be going right now for the Rebels, and I can't wait for this game on Saturday, and we will break that game down in full in just a little bit. All right, how about we'll stick in the SEC. Let's talk about Tennessee right now. The Vols are 5-1, remaining schedule at Alabama, at Kentucky, versus Oklahoma at home. They get New Mexico State at home. They have to go to Florida, and then they end the season at home against Vanderbilt. ESPN John playoff predictor, 28%. Contender or pretender for the Vols?
I'm saying pretender. I want to see Joey Aguilar take the show on the road. You know, we could completely have a narrative shift this week if Tennessee's able to win that game in Tuscaloosa, but I don't think that they will. That would be their second conference loss. That kind of puts them behind the eight ball with, you know, so much of the season still left to go. You still got Oklahoma. You still have to go to the Swamp, and Vanderbilt's no joke waiting for you there at the end of the season. So I think, assuming that they lose this weekend, which I am, I think that we're looking at a 3-loss Tennessee team, and ultimately that's probably not going to be enough to get them in. It would really take some carnage across the rest of the conference in order for Tennessee to kind of raise its level. I think that would open the door for maybe the ACC sneaking in another team, or I don't think that the Big 12 will be a two-bid league, but we shall see. Big Ten, obviously, like kind of we're getting some separation at the top, but I think ultimately Tennessee's going to need some help to get itself into the college football playoff. And then, I think come season's end, there will be a bit of a referendum on this Tennessee team, missing the playoff after making it last year. Ultimately, I see a lot of good in this Tennessee team, but they don't strike me as one of the 12 best teams in college football. They just don't. I'm in agreement with the ESPN's model there at 1-4 shot of getting in. I think that's about right.
Yeah, I'm going pretender, but for the big reason is their secondary. It's atrocious. It's stinky. Like, let's be honest. The Jermod McCoy thing it's like we're getting into almost like Cam Rising territory with this, where it's just like every single week, he could be back. He could be back. He's questionable. But we probably aren't going to see this kid. He tore his ACL back in January, which I feel horrible for him. He's one of the best defensive back prospects in the country. It wouldn't surprise me if he just shuts it down and almost just focuses for the NFL, because I think most mock drafts have him already going in the first round. So why go back and even ruin that stock? But Tennessee's, their secondary is terrible. And just look at some of the quarterbacks that they got coming up. Ty Simpson this week. You got Mateer possibly fully healthy at that point when they play him. You got Pavia at the end of the year. And we know that Lagway can turn it on at some points, especially at home in Gainesville. So I think things are going to get worse for that secondary. And Joey Aguilar, he's still just one of these guys. I'm just waiting for the turnover to happen. So pretender.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then lastly, there's a lot of rumors right now about this could be Billy Napier's last weekend. But if he's still coaching at Florida for that Tennessee UF game later on in the season, that was one that we talked about after Florida beat Texas. And it's like, how does Billy Napier save his job? And it's getting one more signature win. I do think that Tennessee is the most gettable of those games for Florida, and then that sets up a sort of mutually assured destruction on both sides, where Tennessee gets bounced from playoff consideration and Florida possibly locked into having more Billy Napier. But it does seem like the brass might be out on Napier regardless of what he does the rest of the way. We'll see.
Yeah, those rumblings are starting to pick up big time and turning into just full-on just talking points now, I would say. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about Texas Tech. The Red Raiders are 6-0. Their remaining schedule at Arizona State this weekend. You get Okie State at home, have to go to Kansas State. BYU goes to Lubbock. UCF has to go to Lubbock. And then they end the season in Morgantown at West Virginia. Playoff predictor, ESPN has them at 71%. Instead of asking you, are they a playoff contender? I want to what kind of noise can Texas Tech make once they get in? So the Red Raiders are minus 175 right now to win the Big 12. Very, very heavily favored. And rightfully so. I feel like this is their last really big test possibly this weekend. I don't want to sleep on Kansas State too much because it does seem like they've turned things around. But can this Texas Tech team make some legit noise once we get to the college football playoff?
I think they can. I think that they are almost like this year. this year's version of Florida State, where they nailed it with the transfers, and this is like the good case for being reliant
2023
on
Florida State.
Yeah, of course, not 2-10. We know that Texas Tech is not going to have 10 losses by the end of this season, but yeah, I just think that Romello Height and David Bailey off the edge, that's the best edge tandem in college football, not just in the Big 12. That's a big problem for the rest of the Big 12 because they don't have offensive lines that can really hold up against that. We've seen that. Those two combined for 20 pressures last weekend against Kansas. That's absurd. So I think that, they want to be in a spot where they're undefeated, of course, but I think that they can, if they're undefeated and they get a top 4 seed, and they're on a bye, like I could see them potentially getting into the college football semifinals. Like looking at some of the other teams that they could potentially be matching up against, like an Oregon or a Georgia. Like I would like Texas Tech's chances against those teams. I think the defense is that good. We still kind of need to know a little bit more about this offense and this passing game, and Morton kind of being in and out of the lineup. I know that they like their backup quarterback, the young kid, everything like that, but I think Texas Tech is probably still at its best with Morton, and I still don't think that Morton is like an overly high ceiling quarterback, so I don't think that this is a team that necessarily makes it to the championship game, but I would not be completely stunned if this Texas Tech team is in the Final Four.
Yeah, so going to that offense, I like that they're comfortable, whether it's Morton in there or whether Will Hammond comes in, the backup. They just seem comfortable, like no matter who's under center for them. And I do think that speaks loudly about the program and the culture that Joey McGuire's got going on there right now. But you nailed it for the reason why I do think that this team can make some real noise. It's that defense, specifically the defensive line, which is just nasty. It's one of the best defensive lines in the country. They can wreak havoc and really get to teams. I can't wait to see how this game with Arizona State's going to play out. I believe Texas Tech has never won in Tempe. So this is going to be an interesting one this week. Sam Leavitt is probable. Looks like he's going to be back. So big test for them here this weekend. But after that, like you can really see they might be able to just take this momentum and ride it into the playoff. I wouldn't be surprised either if they're still standing after Christmas and we get towards the new year. So I'm going to go with absolutely a contender that Texas Tech can make some noise deep into the playoff.
It will be interesting if they do slip up and they have to potentially play a road game if the committee kind of punishes them for their conference or what have you, and they have to go on the road somewhere cold. Would be interested to see how they hold up there. So I think that game against Kansas State on the road is going to be like that potential slip-up spot because K-State is playing a little bit better these days after a really shaky start to the season. They're still not allowed on our betting cards, of course, but keep an eye out for that in 3 weeks.
They are. Kansas State has definitely had some movement here where they might not be on the ban list for much longer. It's maybe it was just a month punishment after losing to Army, which is just perfectly reasonable and acceptable, and I think everybody should just accept that. You lose to Army at home like that, you get banned.
Justified completely.
All right, very good. All right, let's dive in here in a second because I do want to say if you are watching the video, thank you very much. Just make sure that you like the video and hit that subscribe button. It will not change your life whatsoever. It just helps John and I as we continue to try to build this show here. So hit subscribe on YouTube, or if you're listening on podcast, hit subscribe on Apple or Spotify. We are at College Football Tailgate on all 3 platforms. Once again, like that video too. It does help us out in a big way, more than you know. You can follow us on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25. We are on TikTok at CFB Tailgate, where we have a lot of fun with a lot of our listeners and the commenters. You can also follow us individually if you would like. I'm at Dan Watkins Radio. John is at Johns_Tailgate. All right, without further ado, let's get to these Week 8 game breakdowns. And let's start off pretty much in your neck of the woods, John, your backyard, basically, Athens, Georgia. Ole Miss at Georgia, number 5, number 9. Ole Miss is 6-0, Georgia 5-1. The Dogs favored by 7.5 here now. This was under a touchdown at one point this week, but it has since moved. We got coaches taking shots at each other. Uncle Lane saying that Kirby doesn't burn many calories and that he's spoken to him about his weight loss in the past and all that kind of stuff. So Lane's feeling pretty good. But as we look at this game and really start to dive into these teams, John, we have an elite passing offense in Ole Miss against a Georgia secondary and defense, specifically defensive line, that doesn't get much pressure on the quarterback here. So how are you looking at this game? Are you nervous about this Rebels passing attack with what has gone on with Georgia so far this season? We've seen both Joey Aguilar and Ty Simpson have big days through the air against Georgia.
Absolutely, we have. And I think, to me, the big question is, can Georgia play 4 quarters of defense? Because their second half defense of late has been spectacular. It looks like what you would expect from a Georgia team. But first half, they seem to just they let the other team dictate. They let the other team get on top. Like, I don't think that Georgia has held a lead in 11 straight games at halftime against a power opponent, which is nuts. I mean, it's just, you can't afford to start that slow in this league, especially against a team as good as Mississippi. So Georgia needs to come out on fire. They need to dictate the tempo with their offense, and they need to get some stops defensively. Otherwise, a situation like last week where they're potentially down 17 to Auburn, if they're down 17-0 against this Ole Miss team, that becomes probably insurmountable. And I think it's harder to make a halftime adjustment against this Ole Miss offense than it was against Auburn's, where, like I said, Auburn didn't trust Jackson Arnold to throw the ball more than 6 yards down the field. Ole Miss, totally cool with Trinidad Chambliss hucking that thing. So that to me is going to tell the whole tale. And this might be dangerous on my part, but I am of the belief that Georgia is going to be able to break that cycle as far as the defense getting off to a slow start. And I also think it's maybe an underrated storyline here where I think this Georgia offense is actually really good and really complete. I'd like to see them get a little bit more involvement out of the pass catchers that aren't Zachariah Branch, but I think the run game is going to have a lot of success in this spot. I think the offensive line getting a little bit healthier. Monroe Freeling played extremely well last week. It didn't even look like he was going to be able to go. He was like warming up with the third stringers before that game, and then he won SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. So I think that this Georgia offense is going to be able to hang with Ole Miss as far as the scoring goes, and I think that the defense is going to put a bit of a lid on this Rebs offense. And ultimately, like, we've seen cases like this before, and obviously the different team, different year, but like a couple years ago when Tennessee was the number 1 team in the country in the first college football playoff rankings, they went to Athens, and everyone was stunned that the line was what it was. Everyone was dumping money on Tennessee plus 8.5 or whatever it was, and Georgia just completely stifled them. I don't know if they're going to stifle Ole Miss the same way necessarily as they did Hendon Hooker and company a few years back, but I think something similar here where your public perception, your knee-jerk reaction of seeing Ole Miss be this big of an underdog against a Georgia team that maybe hasn't passed the eye test defensively, but I think ultimately the line is right. I think Georgia has this.
Yeah, I like both these offenses on Saturday, if we're being honest. So these are 2 of the top 20 scoring offenses in the country. Ole Miss, we know they're going to want to play with a lot of tempo, which that's going to be interesting to see early because, as you were hinting at, Georgia's been starting really slowly. Like, it's almost like, do they know what time this game kicks off? We've seen that joke go around on the internet this week quite a bit. Where it's like, this is a 3:30 kick, but Georgia thinks it's at 4:15 or something like that, basically. First SEC road start for Trinidad Chambliss as well. That's another interesting factor here. He came in in relief against Kentucky earlier on this season. Another key point, this Ole Miss passing offense ranks number 8th in the country. They are 2nd in the SEC. John, Georgia's defense ranked 118th in sacks per game at just 1 per game. There's only one school in the Power 4 that has a worse pass rush when it comes to sacks right now. The North Carolina Tar Heels. Not great. Not great when you're getting mentioned in the same breath as them.
No, that's terrible. That needs to get fixed. The pass rush, I think Glenn Schumann maybe can get it figured out. Maybe just take some of the lessons that you learned from the second half last week or the second half against Alabama and just apply them for the whole game, because it is one of those weird things where like the split is so extreme that you think that there's these like big second or like halftime adjustments, but apparently those aren't actually that real, even with how stupid long college football halftimes are. But regardless, Georgia does seem to play much better in the second half. They need to string it together for 4 quarters. If they don't, if it's a similar script to those other danger spots like against Tennessee, like against Alabama, and even against Auburn, I think Ole Miss is too good to be able to just play half a game and call that good enough.
So I do think something else that's working in Georgia's favor here when it comes to starting off quickly is that Ole Miss is not good against the run. They rank 96th in the country. They're allowing close to 160 rushing yards per game. Would be nice to see that Georgia running back room really take over a game for the first time if the Dogs are going to win and cover here.
So ultimately here, got some metrics for you as far as the
What do the computers say?
The computers are telling us two different things. SP Plus has this one as a total nail biter, 53 combined points. Georgia narrowly outlasting Ole Miss 27-26. FEI, I like what the FEI is putting out. Georgia 34, Ole Miss 24.
Oh, 10-point, double digits.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Trusting Kirby there. What is your pick on this one if you had to make a pick? You laying the 7.5?
I'm laying the 7.5. I think that this Ole Miss team, whereas last year their front seven was insane. I think that was like the story of the Ole Miss game last year, and of course that was in Oxford as well. But they had some serious, first round, second round talent on that front seven. I'm not sure that that's quite there the same way, and I don't think that they're going to be able to affect Gunnar Stockton the same way that they affected Carson Beck a year ago. And like you said, this run game for Georgia, a little bit better, a lot deeper. I'm looking for a lot of Nate Frazier in this spot, some Josh McCray mixed in, especially in short yardage. We'll see what's up with Chauncey Bowens. Was kind of limited late in the game last week with a calf. We'll see if he's back to 100%. Peanut has seemingly disappeared off the face of the earth, Peanut Phillips, but he's a nice speed option. But Georgia has a lot of different types of running backs to potentially throw at this Ole Miss defense as well, and slow down a pass rush that also just hasn't been that great thus far. So I like the Dogs here.
Yeah, I think Georgia wins, but I would not be surprised one bit if Ole Miss covers in this game. I do think this will be a close one. I'm not touching the side. I love the over, though, here. That's going to be on my card this week. I'm going over 53.5 in this game. I do think both offenses are going to be able to move the ball and should be able to move the ball throughout this game, especially early. We do see some vulnerabilities on each defense that I do think play right into the hands of the opposing offense that they should be able to really get up and down the field here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the safer call. I'm gonna go with Georgia. They will be on my card. Spoiler alert. But yeah, that probably the more sensible, objective look from you. I try to be as objective as I can about Georgia.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is tough.
It's tough. We're going to get to Notre Dame USC in a few minutes here, and we'll turn the tables, and I'll let you do the grilling and the questioning and everything that's going on there. But let's talk about another game first. We'll ease into that and break that up for everybody. Third Saturday in October, Tennessee heads to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. John, the Tide favored by 7.5. That seems to be a very popular number this weekend across the board. A lot of 7.5s out there, including in this one. We got two amazing passing offenses, both in the top 15. Bama ranks 15th. Tennessee ranks 7th. This game here, John, as I start to look at this one, right, I got two questions. One, does this Tennessee secondary have any shot of slowing down Ty Simpson? And two, is this the week that the Bama run defense finally bends a little too much and lets this game get too close and maybe even out of hand here?
Right. So Bishop is kind of a key piece there for that Tennessee offense in the run game in particular, obviously. But I am worried about that Tennessee secondary, and I think that the kind of loud introduction from that Bama freshman receiver gives them four really problematic wide receivers for Tennessee to account for when they're shorthanded. That's a problem. It's in Tuscaloosa. Took a gander at Winsipedia, which is a great little database to look for head-to-head history between teams. By my count, Tennessee hasn't won in Tuscaloosa since 2003. So I know that they've won two of the last three matchups. Both of those were in Knoxville. I'm worried about Tennessee in this spot. I think that Alabama could really kind of flex its muscle in this spot. I think Alabama's really hitting their stride, whereas it feel like it's been a little bit, and I wish I touched on this more in Contender Pretender, but what's been up with Tennessee? I mean, you beat Miss State by a touchdown, and I think that was in overtime, and you at home 34-31 against Arkansas. I don't really excuse look-aheads, especially when you're a team like Tennessee that wants to be included among the elite. I don't dig that. That's a concerning one for me. So I think that defense is really showing to be something that's going to be a limiting factor for them. And I think you can only count on the deep shot landing so many times. And I think that's just kind of a general problem with these Josh Heupel offenses, that they're so reliant on the big play. I don't think Alabama gives them up nearly enough here for Tennessee to stay in this one. I think Alabama kind of mushes them.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way too, really because of that Tennessee secondary, ranked 123rd in the FBS in passing yards allowed. You're going against possibly the best quarterback and best passing attack in college football this weekend on the road. Like, that just does not set up well. As we talked about a little bit in the Contender-Pretender segment, Jermon McCoy kind of becoming almost like a running joke of like, yeah, he's questionable. He might be back. Now, I could be wrong, and he could actually suit up this week. But like I said, I'm starting to get like Cam Rising kind of vibes out of him. That's just like every week we're just going to say he's questionable, even though he's actually pretty far away. Now, where Tennessee, I do think, might be able to hit those home run plays is in this ground game. Because as we've seen, Alabama's run defense has not been good, and they have been giving up some big runs throughout this season. Tennessee has one of the best rushing offenses in the country. 22nd ranked rushing offense, averaging over 200 yards per game, 210, I believe, to be exact. They are putting up over 48 points per game, but you really got to look at some of those defenses that they've played here. Alabama, I think, is another step up. And then when it comes to the Tennessee defense, they've allowed at least 31 points in every single SEC game so far this season. And that none of those offenses, all due respect to the Arkansas, even Georgia, I think this Alabama offense is even better, especially if they're healthy. Now, health is a question here. A couple of injury notes for the Tide going to this one. Jam Miller is in the protocol. He's questionable. We'll see. We've seen he has made a huge difference for the Tide running the ball. The other one, John, what's going on with Ryan Williams? Oddly doesn't start against Mizzou last week. First time in his college career. He was the 6th wide receiver to enter the game with just 31 snaps. Only one target last week against Mizzou. Kalen DeBoer kind of swept it under the rug after saying that there was a lingering injury as the reason why. Now, if there was a lingering injury, though, like, why not just shut him down completely instead of just trying to get him on the field at some point? Like, something odd there to me.
Yeah, so Ryan Williams is such a difference maker. I think it got a little bit overblown that he had like a slight cold stretch after the UGA game last year. Like, I think that his loud performances are like very much indicative of who he is as a player. But like I was saying, Latsier Brooks, like, coming in, even if Ryan Williams isn't himself, you still have Jeremy Bernard, who's having an unbelievable year. You got Isaiah Horton, transfer from Miami, who's been doing awesome, and Latsier Brooks, like. And I think their tight end, Josh Cuevas, is actually really good, too, as sort of like that like check down, just move the chains type of option. I do think it's a legit concern that Alabama might be, again, in trouble as far as running the ball. But, like we said earlier this week, just Caden Proctor it. You can do that in short yardage. And Daniel Hill, the other big fella, the 240-pounder. Yep. So they have enough guys on hand who I think kind of circumnavigate the any sort of Jam Miller limitations.
All right. What are the computers saying about this one?
The computers are telling us SP Plus has this one as a close game for Alabama, 29-27.
Okay.
And my dog's excited about this one. And FEI, actually, so FEI seems to be a little bit more on the idea of some blowouts this weekend or two-possession finals. Bama 33, Tennessee 22.
Okay. I think I'd even go higher with that Bama number. I'm like looking at what I want to play in this one. I lean pretty strongly towards Alabama covering. Just over a touch. I don't know. Some of these spots, man, in these conference games, this time of year, we got some injuries. Like, I don't want to lay over a touchdown. So I think how I'm going to look to play this one, I'm going to go Alabama team total over 33.5 on this one. I think the Tide pick up their end when it comes to getting towards the total. So I'm just going to target them, where I think Tennessee, I think this might be a long night down there in Tuscaloosa for them.
Yep, I like the Tide to cover. I might even have to add that to the old card. But, ultimately, I just think that Tennessee is going to, like, kind of, even with the good run game, I think there's going to be instances, especially if they're playing from behind, where those short possessions, those 3-and-outs type of things. And Aguilar I know he went into Starkville, but Tuscaloosa, kind of a different dealio entirely. Again, I like the Tide a lot here.
All right, very good. Moving on, let's head up to South Bend, Indiana. Possibly the last time we're going to see USC and Notre Dame take the football field against each other, scheduled anyway, going into a season for a while, because sometimes, as much as we love this sport, college football just gets in its own way and we do stupid things. And that's, I think, the only way you can really put why USC and Notre Dame might not play for the next couple of years. Anyways, back to this game on Saturday night on NBC. Notre Dame favored by 9.5 now at home, John. The total, 61.5. We got two fantastic offenses. The question really is either defense going to be able to come up with a stop here with what we've seen from them? Couple trends going into this matchup that I do want our listeners to know about. The home team in this series, the last 11 matchups, 9-2 against the spread, by the way. Little interesting gambling note there. Also, when Marcus Freeman and Lincoln Riley are on the sidelines, we're 3-0 to the over. So it could be another night, setting up another night to set up like that, going towards the over here with how these defenses are playing. The Irish defense appears to have turned it around, John, a little bit. They've allowed just 27 points in the last 3 games after allowing 98 over the first 3 games of the season. Now, obviously, the competition is a little bit different when you're taking on a Miami offense and a Texas A&M offense compared to the Boise States, NC States, and who's someone in NC, no,
Arkansas?
Else. Arkansas, there we go.
Fired.
Arkansas, as they were about to can their coach after that game there. It's a little bit different. I can't wait to watch this Mekhi Lemon versus Leonard Moore matchup. I think that's going to be fascinating to see how this game goes. Who wins that matchup can really dictate this thing. Both quarterbacks, CJ Carr, Jordan Mayava, should be able to make plays. How are you feeling going into this one?
I think that the home road splits in this matchup are pretty significant. Like we saw USC lose to Illinois earlier this year when they had to go on the road, and we established it earlier this week that obviously LA is a fortress for USC, yeah. But I'm not sure that they take the show on the road all that well, and I want to get your thoughts on this defensive turnaround and what to make of it, because like you said, totally different levels of competition between the opening couple of weeks versus the last few. But you're getting some confidence, you're getting some things moved around, you're maybe getting the right pieces in place, starting to force some turnovers. So is this defensive renaissance, as it were, is it for real going into this game against a really tough, theoretically, offense with USC?
So I think you hit the key part on that, is that they've been forcing turnovers a lot better than they were earlier on in the season. Now, whether that's they're getting more pressure and just doing that, or they're playing just, teams that play a little more stupid, is another way to put this. The Irish have forced 7 turnovers in their last 3 games. Mayava's thrown picks in each of the last 2 weeks. I do think that's how this game's going to turn eventually. I do think Mayava's going to come up with, or it's going to throw another pick at some point here in this one. I don't know how sustainable it is. The turnovers have been big. We saw Notre Dame was really able to ride that a year ago, and that was a big part of how they were able to get to the national championship game, was because they became so good at it, and then they were also protecting the ball as well. So if Notre Dame does that, I do think they're going to be able to pull away here. And as you were kind of talking about, USC on the road is totally different. They're just 9-8 straight up on the road under Lincoln Riley. And there's this new narrative that I've started to see kind of build a little bit, that USC can now all of a sudden push people around just because of what they did to Michigan last week. I don't think that's exactly the case. I don't think Notre Dame's going to get pushed around by USC this week. I do think as we get into the second half in this game that Notre Dame's going to be able to lean on them, especially in the run game. USC does have a top 30 run defense right now, guys, but they have not seen a 1-2 punch like Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. My question, though, how's Mike Denbrock going to use them? Just 7 catches between the two of them since the Texas A&M game. I hope they stay with that formula and they just feed them by handing them the ball instead of doing those screen passes and stuff like that just can really just bog down a drive and kill momentum if they get blown up in the backfield, which they kind of were early on there against Miami and A&M. CJ Carr, I think, is going to have another big night here. Give me the Notre Dame defense to come up with a few plays and pull away from this one. You want my prediction? USC is going to hang around for a bit. Notre Dame pulls away late, 38-28 the final.
Okay, so a little 10 points, so narrowly covering that one.
Barely covering.
But covering it nonetheless. And FEI is with you. They have Notre Dame winning by 10. And I think another underrated story. I know that that kid King ran really well last week against Michigan, but I think it is important that USC's running back depth just got completely decimated last week with Wayshawn Parker and with Eli Sanders both out for the season or for a long time, and depending on who you're talking about. So all of a sudden, like, Maeva's kind of going to be on an island a little bit here, and I mean, if Notre Dame can at least just hem in the Maeva-Makai Lemon tandem, I think that, all of a sudden we're going to see some USC drives sputter out. So I'm still sus on this USC team overall. I don't think beating Michigan at home really moves me this iteration of Michigan. So I'm in on the way that Notre Dame has kind of turned things around after that rocky start to the season. The offense, I think, is really complete. I keep saying that. I like Notre Dame in this one as well against the spread.
Yeah, and I think one thing we didn't mention either, this is pretty much a playoff elimination game on both sides for the losers here in this one. Whether it's a third loss for Notre Dame or USC dropping another one, like, this pretty much is going to end those playoff hopes for the loser here of this one. I do want to say, though, and I meant to say this on Monday's show, I didn't get this off my chest. We were going a little long. I do want to say it. I'll say it right here, though. Anybody out there that thinks a 10-2 Notre Dame team is not getting into the playoffs, what are you on? Like, they're getting in if they run the table and get to 10-2, especially if Miami wins the ACC and Texas A&M somehow ends up in Atlanta. Not somehow ends up in Atlanta. In Atlanta right now, they're at the top of the conference. They lost 2 games by a combined 4 points to possibly 2 of the best 3 teams in the country going in. Notre Dame's getting in the playoff if they go 10-2. Just going to say.
Yeah, tough scene for the ND doubters, or the idea that, like, they get preferential treatment or whatever. Like, 10-2 resume like that, beating USC here, some other quality wins along the way. Maybe nothing quite as good as what beating Miami or A&M would have done, but again, if those are 2 of the top 4 teams in the country, then that counts a lot less against them. And there's always something to be said for finishing hot than starting hot. I mean, like, you go back to the first college football playoff, Ohio State had to, like, barely sneak in. Totally different setup with just the 4 teams, but they lost to Virginia Tech at home in week 2. But by the end of the season, they were rolling. Notre Dame could, I'm not predicting the exact same stuff, but I think Notre Dame, like, definitely going to have a really strong case of getting in if they're 10-2.
And then on the other side, too, let's say USC pulls off this upset. Like, you put some wind in their sails. Okay, we just beat the Irish in South Bend. I would like their chances going to Nebraska in a couple of weeks. You get a Northwestern team at home. Iowa has to go out to Southern Cal. Then maybe you get a coin flip game with Oregon up there in the Northwest, and then you finish off with UCLA. So, like, USC can build some big-time momentum and really, I think, kind of jumpstart and jump spring the rest of their season too.
No, they totally could, and this wouldn't be a conference loss for them, obviously. If they win, it's a huge win for them, but I could still see, like, 2 losses in addition to this one the rest of the way. I even think that suddenly that UCLA game a little bit scary at the end of the year.
Absolutely, with the way they're going. New Heisel can put up points on anybody, so that'll be something to watch when we get towards the end of the year. I do want to do one more kind of in-depth breakdown here. We got to talk about the 103rd edition of the Holy War. We got Utah heading up to Provo to take on BYU. John, the Utes favored by 3.5 in this one on the road. BYU has won the last 2 meetings between these 2 schools after losing 9 straight before that. I was going to ask you, are you buying stock on BYU right now? But they're doing the exact same thing that they did a year ago. Like, is this the blueprint for BYU football, just these hot starts?
It seems to be. And obviously Bachmeier is doing well as a true freshman quarterback, everything like that. But I like Utah in this spot. The computers seem to think that this one is going to be within the number, so, like, that they like BYU in this one. But I think Utah has an edge in several key factors. I think the offensive line and the quarterback play both favor the Utes in this spot. And BYU,
Damp boys. Boys.
The Damp boys might be back from the dead after this one, and I think additionally
they just need a trip to Provo. Like, let's be honest, sometimes you just got to make a pilgrimage out there to Mormon country, and then right. The Damp boys are back.
I think that's how we're going to see it play out, and I feel like no one has really like penalized BYU for playing like this crazy overtime game against Arizona last week. Like, oh man, like I think I think the comp to last year is pretty spot on. Where it's just like they're racking wins. Or not the resume, but like the win loss thing, while everyone else is kind of dealing with some carnage. So like all of a sudden BYU just creeping up the rankings with the 0 net in their loss column. I think the first loss is coming this weekend. I like the Utes here.
Yeah, as we get closer and closer, I'm starting to talk myself into Utah more and laying the points here. I'm just been reading some of the press clippings from Kyle Whittingham this week. It seems like he's extra locked into this one. I mean, you got a big-time rivalry game. For the first time since 2009, both schools are ranked going into this matchup. So a nice little nugget there. Another thing about this one that's interesting, both these teams just love to chew the clock up. They love to chew clock. Like if there was a market for the fastest game of the weekend, I think I'd pick this one. I think these two teams just want to run the ball and run it at you and try to run it down your throats here. And if Dampier or Bachmeier have to make a play, then so be it. But I think if we get into that kind of situation, basically, to put it pretty plain and simple, I trust Utah's dudes more than I trust the dudes on BYU.
I think that's well said. I'm open to the idea of BYU being legit, but nothing that's happened so far really like steers me strongly towards it. Whereas Utah, I know they had the tough one against Texas Tech, but we were just gassing up Texas Tech earlier on. I think that this Utah team like kind of gets itself back into the bit of the national spotlight this week.
Yeah, and I'll also say this too, like I don't think BYU's going anywhere anytime soon. This isn't like a 2-year little flash in the pan thing. Like they're building something out there, and I think the Bachmeier addition, the young quarterback, they could if they keep him there in Provo, like BYU's going to be hanging around towards the top of the Big 12 for the next few years here.
And they, be on the lookout. They've got some money. They're not quite Texas Tech level, but like they're going to be able to pull some recruits that might surprise you.
Yeah, and they got an absolutely gorgeous stadium too. This is just unfortunately though that this game is on at the same time as both Notre Dame, USC, and Bama, Tennessee. So if you got a third TV screen, that's where I'd put this one when we're ranking those games Saturday night.
Yeah, you can quad box it and just throw that on.
Oh yeah, YouTube TV does the little quad box, right? For sure.
Yes, they do. You just keep your sound on probably the Notre Dame or the Bama games. Well, although this one might be, if you're a neutral observer, the most competitive of those three.
It could be. It very well could be. All right, let's quick hit a couple of these other games going on. We talked about LSU and Vanderbilt, John. Like, is this game over if Vandy just scores 21 points? Like, can LSU finally get into the upper 20s on offense here? Because I have my doubts with the way they've been playing.
I think that Vandy has this one. I think that they're going to win this one outright. I think it's going to be really close. I think we're talking last couple of possessions of the game. I can see it in my mind's eye with LSU having the ball with the chance to win late in the fourth quarter and Nussmeier throwing the back-breaking interception. So ultimately, I think that Vanderbilt matches up really well. I think they're going to be able to, but by one way or another, get over that magic 20 number here against this LSU defense. I could even see them, getting a defensive or a special teams touchdown as well to kind of help aid them. And yeah, ultimately, LSU just overly reliant on its defense. I think that the offense isn't going to really put that much of a scare. I know that some of our LSU, more respectful LSU commenters on our TikTok were saying that, hey, we got inside the 10 a bunch of times last week, but it's like, well, how'd you end up with 20? Like, how is that like a good sign that you're not finishing drives? Yes, I mean, there is obviously something to be said for having a successful drive that ends in the opponent's red zone, but you got to cash them in. And I think Vanderbilt's defense, especially in Nashville, is going to be better than what South Carolina was bringing on the road a week ago. So problem's not fixed to me as far as LSU. Like, could things work out where like all of a sudden everything clicks? Sure, they have the talent to, but we're halfway through the season at this point and it still hasn't clicked in any meaningful way against a real opponent. So why exactly would you expect to continue against a Vanderbilt team that you actually have to take seriously now?
So another interesting little nugget here. Vanderbilt's off a bye going into this one. As you mentioned, LSU just kind of sweated it out against South Carolina. Vandy, they've had 2 weeks to figure out, why it was that they weren't finishing drives. John, remember a couple weeks ago against Alabama, they had the 2 big red zone turnovers that ultimately swung that game. So did they figure something out, and can they get going against this LSU defense? That's going to be fascinating to watch. Vanderbilt hasn't beaten LSU since 1990, which is not that wild if you've watched a lot of Vanderbilt football over the past few years, but it's still something out there. And Vandy's favored by 2.5 right now, guys. Here we go. Stat of the weekend, possibly stat of the month, maybe even stat of the season. According to CBS Sports Research, this is the first time Vanderbilt has been favored versus LSU since 1948, and the first time they have been favored against a ranked opponent since at least 1978. Vanderbilt has played an astounding 176 straight games against ranked opponents as an underdog. What a time to be alive.
Clark Lee, take a bow, dude. Like, that's unbelievable to take Vanderbilt to this level. And I remember it was like either his first or second SEC media days, and he's like, I believe that Vanderbilt can be one of the best programs in the country, and everyone like laughed at him. Look at him now. Unreal.
Look at him now. Yeah, I'm like so dug into my like anti-LSU take at this point that I'm taking Vanderbilt. But like, I don't know. I think Pavia can get it done on Saturday. Let's just put it that way.
I think so too, and yeah, but we're really opening up a can of worms. We're going to get a lot of like an insane amount of trash talk from LSU people if they beat Vanderbilt. So we're kind of in a funny spot here where like they're going to be flexing that win, but hey, it would technically be an upset. They are underdogs.
Yep, 2025, man. 2025. That's all you can really say about some of the things that have happened in this season, and that would just be another one on the ever-growing list, it appears. All right, Big 12. Back to the Big 12 we go. Let's head out west. Texas Tech at Arizona State. John, the big story going into this one, right, is Sam Leavitt's health. He is now listed as probable. Looks like he's going to be back. This line was at 10.5 at one point in favor of the Red Raiders. I think it's down to 7 now. Any lean going into this one? I mean, I'm just looking – I love Kenny Dillingham. I love Arizona State. I don't know if they're equipped to handle this Texas Tech defense, even with a healthy Leavitt.
I don't either. I think Leavitt could get knocked around a decent bit here, so we're going to have a real test as to whether he's 100% in this one because, again, Height and David Bailey are going to be getting after him pretty much all afternoon. And, I'm still kind of waiting on Arizona State to have some other trick in their book other than just like hoping that Jordan Tyson can go full beast mode.
It's a pretty good plan A. It's a pretty good plan A.
I'm not saying it's not, but I just think Texas Tech is the more complete team right now. It's interesting that they haven't beaten Arizona State. Obviously, they haven't been conference mates for super long.
On the road. They beat them last year. They did beat them last year in Lubbock. But on the road,
right.
They have not.
That was like a weird, like really early season game.
That was the game that was, I think, the last loss for ASU before they started their crazy run.
Yeah, and it like didn't even register with me that it was a conference game at that point. But yeah, I like Texas Tech. I stand by what I said earlier in the pod that they're one of the 8 best teams in the country, if not better than that. And I think that they show it here against Arizona State.
We haven't talked too much about the ACC this week, guys. We did give out Georgia Tech +3 as a pick on our Monday show. That line has moved in our favor. It's now Duke -1.5. So hopefully you jumped on Georgia Tech there. Excuse me. Do you want to quickly talk about Miami and Louisville? Put this game at the very end of our rundown, John, because it's Friday night and I didn't want to have stuff be dated right at the beginning of the show. So Friday night fun, we'll call it here. Miami, Louisville, down there at Hard Rock. The Canes are favored by 13.5 here. Total just at 48.5, which is interesting because the last 4 times that these two teams have met, the average points in those games, 81.5. Absolutely wild.
God, that is love that. But the computers seem to think that that's just a little bit too many points in favor of Miami. They view this more as like a 10-point win for Miami. I'm willing to rock with that. I know that Louisville lost against UVA at home a couple weeks ago, everything like that. But I think Louisville's still a good team. I think that, the big story is how their edge personnel holds up against this Miami offensive line, because if there's one thing that has really, really stood out, other than Chris Bell for Louisville this year, it has been their ability to get after the passer. So if they're able to do the undoable, no one's really gotten after Carson Beck and gotten his jersey dirty all season. If they're able to do that, all of a sudden we're in for a fight, and I think that that total starts to make more sense. But if Beck's back there with all day to throw, this will be the Canes by 2 scores.
I almost wonder if the computers have a rust factor built in there, because this is the second game in a month for Miami.
Really weird.
They had 2 bye weeks sandwiched with the Florida State game in the middle.
Right.
So we've hardly seen Miami here in the last month. Maybe they get off to a little bit of a slow start here. I do think that the U eventually pulls away and wins this one. They can reclaim and take the Schnellenberger trophy or hold on to it, whatever it was. I can't, off the top of my head, my brain's kind of mush right now at this point, whether they won or not last year. But yeah, I do think Miami ultimately wins this game here. And I do think it will look a little more comfortable than maybe it actually is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a scoreboard might tell you a slightly different story than what was actually going on. Very similar to the Florida State game almost.
Yeah, exactly. All right, a couple other notes here, guys. Cade Klubnik, Clemson's quarterback, significant concern, according to On3, about the ankle sprain that he suffered last weekend against Boston College in the third quarter. This line, John, has moved crazy today since that news came out a few hours ago. So we're recording this Thursday afternoon. Right now, at about 2:15 in the afternoon Eastern time on Thursday, Clemson's a 5.5-point favorite. 4 hours ago, they were favored by 9.5. So this seems like a significant story here with Klubnik as they get ready to take on SMU at home.
Yeah, I just SMU is kind of a blind spot for me. They've kind of largely
their defense
out.
is horrible. Their defense is horrible. That's all I know.
I don't think that it's that big of a downgrade, 4 points worth of a downgrade. I know that Vizina is a little bit more of an unknown for Clemson. They'll probably have to adjust a little bit. They're probably not going to maximize those receivers the same way you would if you had Klubnik back there. But, I think that the run game with Adam Randall and Vizina, very capable athlete in his own right, more of a big body, pile pusher type of quarterback. I think Clemson ends up being fine. I think I'm interested in them now that the numbers dipped this low.
Within a touchdown. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I saw another stat that was just Clemson hasn't had a quarterback miss a game to injury since 2014.
Wow.
Which is wild. So it's Watson, Lawrence, Klubnik, obviously. Is there one more? Kelly Bryant, maybe, in there?
DJU.
Oh, God, how could I forget? I wiped that from my brain. For a reason.
I think most Clemson people have as well.
Yeah, and I'm not even a Clemson guy. I do have a championship ticket on them, but we know that's on fire. I lit that on fire out in the back. It's gone. It's in the burn barrel. All right, let's get to our betting card. Week 8, second half of the season, gonna go a lot better than the first half.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm telling myself anyway. But it looks like the dog agrees. The dog just barks. The dog agrees. Very good. Okay. John, you want to start us off here? Week 8, best bets. What do you got?
I would love to. Let's start things off with a little Memphis UAB. I'm dancing with fire here because I asked for a under in an AAC game last week, and I think USF almost covered it by themselves. But Memphis UAB under 64.5. I think UAB basically is going to be able to score 10 points. So that's my problem with that one. So if you can get it at 64.5, all the better. Give me Georgia Tech's money line against Duke. I just made a big video about how much I believe in Georgia Tech. You can check that out on our TikTok. It's funny that they are underdogs this week, so you're getting them at plus 105. I think that they get it done. It's going to be a close one. I know that they screwed around with Wake Forest earlier this year. I think it's going to be tight, but I think Tech's got this one in the win column. Give me Washington plus 6 at Michigan. I think Washington is sneaky very good. I think Damon Williams is a little bit underrated. They lose to Ohio State. That's not that bad. I think otherwise they've been kind of rocking and rolling, and I have a lot of questions about this Michigan team right now. Speaking of Ohio State, huge number. This might be the biggest number I give out all year, but it's a statement on how much I think Wisconsin is in the mud right now, or something underneath the mud in the permafrost. Ohio State minus 25.5 in Madison. Didn't they lose Wisconsin lose 37-0 against Iowa? They're not going to score. They're going to get shut out again. And I just don't think that Ohio State's going to score fewer than 28 points. So there we have it. Give me Marshall +3 at home against Texas State. Give me Wyoming +4.5 at Air Force. And then rounding it out, I'm going to add Alabama -7.5, and I'm also taking the Dogs -7.5 against Ole Miss.
All right, very good. So I gave you guys Georgia Tech +3 on Monday. We've gotten some nice CLV on that. It's at +1.5 now. Give me James Madison -1.5 at home against Old Dominion. Let's go Ole Miss and Georgia over 53.5. How about Missouri -1.5? Going to bounce back at Auburn. I think Jackson Arnold is not very good. So give me Mizzou to bounce back. Alabama team total over 34.5. Notre Dame team total over 35.5. Stanford +18 at home taking on Florida State. FSU lost 3 in a row. Now they got to go across the country, laying 3 scores. Give me the Cardinal. And then we'll go with a couple of Friday night games as well. Minnesota +8.5 at home against Nebraska. That has not been a very fun place for Nebraska over the past few years here since they joined the Big Ten. And finally, got to do it. Cal -9.5 against UNC at home. Dead. Just dead.
Is Bill going to get tarmacked?
No, I'm going back to our November 9th. I'm going back to that after the Stanford game right now.
Yeah, the seat got real hot coming out of the Clemson game and everything, but it's cooled off during the bye. They'll lose this game by a lot of points, and they'll start to get their ducks in a row. They'll stop pretending that this is going to somehow get itself back on the rails, but that'll be in November. I like it.
Yep. All right. I think did we miss anything? I think we hit on pretty much everything that we needed to hit on there today.
I believe so, man. We covered a lot of ground.
A lot of ground. We will be back on Monday to react to it all, Week 8 in all of its glory. Enjoy the college football this weekend. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, hit that like, hit that follow button. College Football Tailgate. We're here 2 episodes a week. Looking forward to talking to you guys on Monday, and thank you very much if you have been listening or watching. It means a lot as we continue to try to build this thing. All right, guys, we will talk to you after Week 8's in the books.